I get a message that says this meeting is being live streamed and it wants me to hit OK.
Yeah, yeah, it'll want you to approve.
Okay, well,
We are live now.
I hit OK. So
All right. Well, hello, brothers and sisters. We are live for Falcon Friday. It's been a little while, and I've got my chimney, and Bob has his chimney.
I got my chimney just by accident. We didn't know it.
He's got a twisted stem, though.
Yeah.
The first time I saw one of those stems on a Falcon, I thought somebody had just done that. I didn't know they came like that.
But they made a mistake.
Well, I just thought they had just wrenched it around just
Yeah.
to make it look different.
Called the shillelagh.
But that's one I don't have. Maybe I'll just stick mine in a vise and just crank it around.
Yeah. And in my shillelagh, I'm smoking some Granger.
And I got some Mary Muck. That has become the choice blend for this tall pipe here. So, and I sent out an invitation. I don't know if we'll have anybody else join in with us.
We'll see.
Pipe tree, Chris. Maybe he's around today. Well, I was out of the country. Just got back in on Tuesday.
How long were you gone?
2 weeks. It felt like a shorter visit than my previous one. So that is my fifth time down there in almost a little over a year now. So
That's actually a great area.
yeah, we went to an island this time that's just off the coast of Rio de Janeiro, and uh, had a church member that lived on the island, and nobody had really visited him from the church before, so he was real excited. Normally,
Oh,
it takes him about, I think, about 40 minutes to an hour to get to church when they come, but the rest of the time he goes online and watches the service on Zoom. So
yes. You know, the wonderful thing about online, we talk about some of the negative, but it does connect a lot of people, uh, not only church people, but especially church people, but a lot of people with common interests that they wouldn't get a chance to share and be with like-minded people.
yeah, well, I know a lot of times, when we have our folks in the pod community here, this is really their only way of having a pipe club. At least for me, I can go to Birmingham. We have our pipe club there once a month, so I can be around a bunch of other guys that are pipe smokers, and we have a great fellowship and a great time. So second Saturday of the month at the Briary, if anybody's in Alabama or near Alabama, and I think it's worth the trip. I mean, for me, it's a 2.5 hour trip to get there, but I enjoy just the group of guys that I'm with.
Is your club? Do they meet always in the same place?
Yeah, yeah, we meet in the same place. And the Briary,
Well,
I think they're coming up on their, I'm not mistaken, I think they're coming up on their 50th anniversary here in a few weeks or a month.
uh,
They used to be one of the oh goodness, now it's going to leave my mind, tinderbox. They used to be a tinderbox in the mall. And I remember as a child going up there, the tinderboxes, they had a lot of different things like chess boards and stuff. I'd stand at the window and look in at the chessboard. You'd have the Civil War chess set in there, and I'd just be like, man, one day I'm gonna buy that. But I could always go in there and get a Father's Day gift. I could get a big can of Captain Black for my dad, or some pipe cleaners. He's always the easiest to get a Father's Day or Christmas present for.
I think my first pipe back in the 1960s, when I first started pipe smoking, was Whitehall from the tinderbox. We're getting a Indiana Pipe Club going together, and we meet every other month. And they've decided to. Sometimes we'll meet in northern Indiana up in Fort Wayne, which is north, and then the middle part of our state is Indianapolis and that surrounding communities. And then in a few weeks, we're going to meet down in Bloomington, Indiana, at I think it's called the Briary and the Burley or something like that. I don't know whether it's associated with the same group of stores or not.
Yeah, no, yeah, this brewery is pretty much independently owned. I'm gonna grab a tapered pipe cleaner here.
You're allowed to do that.
This is.
But I'm fortunate enough here. We have it's called Smoker's Choice Cigar Bar, but they got a lot of pipes, a lot of tobaccos, not only enveloped and tin tobaccos. They have probably about 15 of their own blends, and they have a pipe meeting on the first Monday of every month, and it's just kind of open. It's not even, it's just whoever wants to come and smoke their pipes. They also have, I think it's the first Saturday of every month, they have it's called a prayer service, but it's called something else. But they'll get some pastor or somebody in there and they'll talk about, they'll pick out a section of the Bible and talk about it. And it's a very, for a cigar bar, it's very open to a lot of things.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. Sounds like a good deal. Yeah, at the brewery there used to be, I don't know if they still come there, but there used to be a group of local pastors from Birmingham area that all come in once a week and smoke their pipes there.
All
right. and they were people that had most of their congregations known they wouldn't allow that. Because one of the times, one of the pastors, local ice cream shop guy, he also would come there, and he had brought in a bunch of banana popsicles. and one of the pastors, he had the banana popsicle in one hand and his pipe in the other.
Pipe in the other.
And I started to take a picture of it. He's like, "Don't take that picture." I kept threatening that I would out him. But I know what it's like. I mean, I don't run around broadcasting it either to folks in the church, because I mean that's just people wouldn't like it. But most of them they wouldn't like it, but they don't know why they wouldn't like it.
Society, of course, in my lifetime, I'm a lot older. Society, boy, when they turned against tobacco, of course, like I said, it was tobacco's fault. Boy, they just turned against them. I mean, but gee, I served mass with priests that would have a cigarette before the mass service and say the mass service, and then go back in the sacristy and light up another cigarette.
Yeah,
and they never kept it private. We would have festivals and, of course, bingo and stuff like that. And the priest would be down there smoking a cigarette. I mean, it wasn't looked down upon.
Right. Well, I mean, if you could get most church folks to come and see what a pipe club meetup's like, that I think they'd be ashamed at that they don't have that same type of. And I'm just not meaning fellowship with God, but I'm in fellowship with people. You don't have that same interaction with people at a church, and it's a shame. I mean, there's just a certain camaraderie, and it's very clean. At least my pipe club it is, and we have a good group of guys that I hate missing it anytime I miss it, because we really have a great connection there.
Yeah. I'm so old, get this, I'm so old, when you'd go to the doctor's office, of course, you sit out in his waiting room and there would be a coffee table. It'd have magazines on it. You'd have little chairs to sit in. And then between the chairs, you'd have those ashtrays. You know, so you can sit there and smoke and put out your ashes. That's in the doctor's office.
Well, I mean, it's like most people, they couldn't imagine, McDonald's where they used to have the little aluminum ashtrays on every table in the restaurant.
Yeah. Or the airlines I worked for that had built in every armrest was an ashtray on those original airplanes.
Well, I've still seen them in planes in my time flying. They'd have them. Of course, they wouldn't let you use them. But now they've upgraded everything. Even if it is an older plane, they still have like a cigarette disposal in the bathrooms, even though they tell you not to use them. That's still in the bathrooms on the plane, because I just mesmerized each time when you see it. It's a little place that you open it up and you can drop the cigarette down in there, and it's like everything's saying don't smoke on the plane. Maybe Scholar Piper will be on here and answer that for us. But I don't understand how they have that on there when they're telling you not to use it.
Well, of course, in the airline industry, when they had those ashtrays, and then the first thing they did was originally you could smoke anywhere. Then they said, well, we're going to have a smoking section. So they took the back third of the airplane and said, do smokers go back there? And then the ashtrays for those upper seats, they put in little blanks that they took the ashtray out, put a blank there, like that. And therefore they could switch the seats around now and then if they needed to. And then all of a sudden society and the public demanded no smoking on all the airplanes, because after all, even if I'm sitting a row or two up above the smokers, I can still smell those cigarettes. So I'm going to go complain. And then they went all non-smoking. But when I started, one of the jobs I had, and the 40 years there, I worked about every job there was. And I was in catering. And of course, we brought on the supplies that went on the airplanes, and the airlines give little packs of cigarettes that would have 3 cigarettes in it. It had Winston and Chesterfield and Camel, stuff like that. And so part of my job was putting cigarettes on the airplanes.
That's like the K rations for Vietnam. I think they had little 3 or 4 cigarettes in those.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, in fact, they say that the American soldier, a lot of them smoked before they went in there, but a lot of them picked up the cigarette habit because that was just standard issue. You give them these rations of cigarettes.
Yeah, I've got one of the packs, and I've never had an interest in. I've never smoked a cigarette in my life, but
neither have I.
Oh, that's wild. But I saw where there's these guys on the internet that they were. It's like a war, like war history. Mostly they're talking about guns. But anyway, in that they had a pack of cigarettes from Germany from World War II, and then a pack of cigarettes from Japan from World War II, and then they were wanting to find a thing of Chesterfields or something from the U.S. forces to smoke and see what the different ones were like. And they're not even cigarette smokers. They say that, but I thought, well, I've got these cigarettes. I could send them and they could smoke some from Vietnam, because I've got one of those little packs still sealed up. But I think it's toilet paper and chewing gum and cigarettes. It's like I guess in the envelope that they would have had, this is like all of the little extras, the salt and stuff like that.
Well, it was when we was in countries like my father was in World War II, and of course he was stationed in the Philippines, and of course they would get their U.S. cigarettes over there, and I think he was smoking Chesterfield and Camels at the time, but the military would issue those cigarettes, and of course they fought with Filipinos, and the Filipinos had their cigarettes, but boy, they wanted the American cigarettes because they were so much better. Well, what it was the Filipinos wasn't lacing their cigarettes with that tire nicotine. where the U.S. cigarettes was. So they got, oh, this is a lot. You see what I'm saying?
I haven't been keeping up with our chat room, so there might be some people in the chat room on YouTube. So let me double check that. I apologize to those who might be there. I see that there's a few people that comment.
Well, hello, people in live chat.
Hello to the room. We're just sitting here rambling as if nobody's in the chat room.
Ignoring you.
Yeah, sorry about that. Smoking says good evening. Dry fly fisher says I'll be listening live via YouTube today, but unable to join.
Well,
Piper
tell Yusef
says,
Yusef I said his mom hi.
Smoking says I remember we had church outside under the tree. Free
Yeah.
smoked and many others while we were reading the holy book. I was 8 years old. And Ragamuffin Piper says, hello, you too.
Hello,
sorry,
Ragamuffin.
sorry, guys, that I was ignoring you. I didn't mean to be.
Ragamuffin's a good presenter.
Trying to see who else if I missed somebody here. But yeah, I think if you had, I've been in church settings before where I thought, man, if everybody just had a pipe and just could sit back, it would change it would change everything. It'd be more relaxed, and I think everybody would get along better.
Amen. Amen. Well, the churches themselves have changed over the years so much.
Oh yeah, well, I truly saw that because for me, I was overseas pretty much for 25 years, and then when I come back, and I would come back in that 25 years, I'd come back and be here for a month or two, and then I was back, at my house overseas. But I saw so much change in that time period because overseas it didn't change that much. And I would say even like right now, the church that I'm working with in Rio de Janeiro, I would say they are more like a church here in the US would have been in the 90s. So even the young people, they all have their smartphones, but they have a whole different approach to things. There's the level of respect. They listen to what you're saying. Where a lot of young people here they'll buck up against it. I gave this statement this time to some of the youth that I was working with there. I asked them, I said, how many selfies do you think are taken and posted every day? And, of course, they didn't have any idea. I said, worldwide, it is estimated over 9 million selfies are posted on the internet every day. And I said, but what's the purpose in that? Why are you taking this picture of yourself for the rest of the world to see? And so after I talked about that, later that day, I saw one of the girls starting to take a picture. The other youth are like, who is that for? And that was instantly like, who are you taking that picture for? Why are you taking that picture? And they did it in a good-hearted way, but it was like really they're operating as a check to each other, saying who is this for?
And a lot of it's for them.
Right.
They take those selfies for themselves.
But everybody thinks they're going to be an internet star. And I have news for you.
Yeah.
That is not going to happen.
I also think if I was going to if I was some of these people taking these pictures, and you see so many of them, why do you go to your bathroom to take a selfie?
And have the toilet in the background. At least put the lid down.
Yeah. Man,
this is the old Conjure performance here today. And what's up with those young people? Kid, get out of my tree.
That's funny. It's such a habit. I can see somebody in the house. Oh, let's take a selfie. Oh, we got to run to the bathroom.
Brother Alan's asking how he can join us. They can email me. Let me send them my email link here. You can email me and I'll send you the link, provided that I have an idea of who you are. In the early days of us going on Zoom, this was even before COVID, we had a couple of trolls hit us one time, and I think it was only on mine one time that the trolls got us, and I think it was on Uncle Phil that they hit one time.
Yeah. And while he's posted that link, I'll tell you one advantage of a Falcon. I started a while ago when we first started to chat, and I had this full or 3/4 full, and I've now smoked it down. And I knew I would be on a chat today. So the easiest thing about this Falcon is you could unscrew this bowl, set it down, have another already packed and ready to go, like this one is. Put it in, screw it on, and light it up. It's a great feature of the Falcon pipe. Not that I think everybody here should probably already know about Falcons.
Now, do you put the little filter in yours?
The dry ring?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't, because like on this pipe, I think it's causing it to clog up today.
Really? Are you familiar with the International Falcon?
I'm not sure.
You know, not promoting my channel, but I got a couple of videos ago, about a month or so ago, on different Falcon pipes. And what a lot of people don't realize, here's an example of the International Falcon.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't know which they called that one.
Yeah. And the nice thing about it is it has the drip ring, but it also has a filter.
Okay.
So it's double. It's a dry smoke and a filtered smoke. And of course, it takes just the standard bowls like all the other Falcons do. It's a good option.
Central Cal Piper says he's sorry he couldn't make the meeting today. He only had a 15-minute morning break.
He is a busy man.
Yeah, it's time to retire there, brother.
Another thing about the Falcon is, see, I switched bowls. I didn't have to put this pipe down at all. You know, just switch bowls. What's your weather like down there?
Well, today's been a bit overcast, and we're supposed to get some rain this afternoon. I think around 2 o'clock through the rest of the evening, which cuts into my grass cutting time. I was planning on doing that this afternoon, but now I guess it's either going to be tomorrow if the grass dries, or put off to Monday.
Well, we're having probably about the same weather you are. And fortunately, though, I live in a golf club community on a golf course, and they mow my grass. So
Well,
I don't have to, yeah, I don't have to worry about it.
That's pretty nice. Central Cal Piper says he's got 10 more months to go. So he'll retire in March.
All right.
And then you're going to be busier than you have been while you've been working.
Yeah.
That's what I hear from most people that retire. They said they were never as busy as they were once they retired.
Yeah. There's also the flip side of that is there's people that retire and they don't think about having something else to do after they retire. And they retire, then after a couple of weeks, excuse me, they sit around and say, now what?
Yeah.
And they find out they'll become active in something, and pretty soon they'll be just as busy as they were before.
Well, I'm going to be like we got a older preacher here in this community. He is 86 or 87, and he's going. I mean, he is still going strong. I went with him to a convention a few months back, and wow, keeping up with him and all the people that know him, and just that's what I want to be. I want to still be able to go that strong.
Yeah. Good Lord willing, and a creek don't rise.
Yeah.
The old saying. We have one here.
Ragamuffin said he retired at 55 and has never been sorry about that.
Well, I retired at 55, but I just immediately got another job. And then I left that job for another job.
Well, you know, oh, go ahead.
I did have a couple, had a couple knee implants and a hip implant and some other issues that kind of slowed me down. So now I know I'm not fit to be an employee of anybody. So I am retired.
You're the Bionic Man at this point.
Yeah.
Build him.
Yeah. Now I am the consumer.
Now, how'd you get into the airline industry?
Well, right out of high school, back then the Vietnam War was really hot and heavy. So right out of high school, they immediately, within a week or two, changed my classification. Back then we had these cards, and to 1A. So I got immediately called 2 weeks out of graduation in high school, which was in May. And I had to go down and to the office and recruiting office, what it was. And they told you to pack a bag with a few overnight clothes, because if they took you, they would take you right then and there. And of course, Dad, who had been in the military, told me about it. Says, it ain't like you're going to go down to interview. They're going to go down and give you a physical. If you're going to go, you're going to go. Well, I played in 3 sports in high school and was weightlifting. I did a lot of stuff. And I had what they known as an athlete's heart. My heart was a little larger. And of course, I was a tall kid. 6'2". Excuse me for the noise. I was a tall kid, 6'2", and kind of muscle and stuff like that. And I knew the heart may be an issue, but anyhow, I was rejected. They made me 4F or whatever it was at the time, meaning not fit for military service. So then I went and enrolled at Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana. Hated college, but that's where I picked up my first pipe. And dropped out of there, came back home, and we lived within a mile of the airport. My grandfather had worked for the airport, so I just went over there and just applied for an airline and worked there for 40 years.
Wow.
9/11 ended my career. When 9/11 happened, remember that they grounded all the airplanes all across the United States. And boy, for 48 hours, we did nothing. And then they said, we're going to allow the airlines to slowly go back. We're going to get this noise again as they go back down the road.
You would have thought that 9/11 would have been a time for really retrofitting a lot of these planes.
Well, as a matter of fact, they did. The airline took advantage of that. They started parking these airplanes. But then also when the FAA allowed us to start flying, at first, within the next 4 or 5 days, they said you could only run 20% of your flights. So then the airlines had to take a look at their system map and say, well, which airplanes do we want to fly and where? And then they slowly ramped up. But then we had airplanes set, when they immediately grounded all the airplanes, the airplanes were all over the United States. The crews were all over everywhere. Nobody was flying. We had airplanes stuck in places and crews that got on buses that came home, and now there was no way to get those airplanes back. It was a heck of a deal. But when that happened, and my wife, she worked for the airlines too. I was a manager, and she was a reservation agent there. And I told her at that time, I says, we got all of our eggs in one basket. And I said, one of us needs to go, and I got so much time in, you need to think about it. She had 17 years in at the time. So she went back to school and got into computers, became a computer person, and started working with colleges. And now she's a director of we have a college here in Terre Haute, Indiana. It's the St. Mary of the Woods, the nuns, the Sisters of Providence. They started that college. So she's now director of that. But I went on ahead, and then about a year later, the airlines come out and said, we're going to reduce our staff, and have decided that anybody that's 55 years or older and have 25 years in, you can retire. Well, I was old enough and had the time in, so I took retirement, and I got full retirement, just like I was 65. So I was really blessed. Of course, I got out of there. Within 2 weeks, I had another job, and I was really making some money. But 9/11 changed a lot of things. I would say 9/11 changed about as much things as now COVID. When we experienced COVID, that changed a lot of things.
Well, I think COVID, at least from my, as a patron of the airlines, COVID changed the way that you interact with the airline personnel. That was the thing that really, it shocked me, because my first flight, which would have been December of 2022, and that was flying back to Rio, I noticed that the flight staff, the stewardesses or whatever, you're not supposed to call them I still call them stewardesses. Flight attendants. There we go. There's a PC terminology for today. but they were a lot more just snippy and not as polite as they had been in the past, and it was more like it wasn't like you were the customer. And the first flight I flew, it was a horrible experience because of that. And I really wondered what it was gonna, what the changes would be. Now, I would say this time the stewardess that we had, flight attendant. but
You ain't gonna change.
I'm not going to change. I reached old codger status when I was in my mid 20s, but but you know, I just gonna say she was everything that you would have wanted because she was just polite. She was comical. You know, just I mean, it was great. And I had the same person. She wasn't on the flight, but she was at the desk when I was coming back, and just real friendly and just funny and just great. But that is what it used to be like, and nowadays everybody, COVID, I think, just put everybody on the edge. 9/11, I think it may have changed more of the infrastructure and the inner workings, but I never saw it really change the way that the industry related to the customer.
And kind of the difference is of course, 9/11 was an attack on our country, but it was also a specific regional, or had a specific target, specific area, even though there was that airplane down in Pennsylvania, and then, of course, the Pentagon and New York. But COVID was worldwide. COVID is everywhere. It was in every state, every city, every place. And the way I look at those flight attendants, and I have empathy for them because they really go through a lot of crap. And I just think it was it just strained him so much. I know I talked to a few, and I talked to a few flight attendants where at one time they said, I would go to bed at night, get to sleep and get up and look forward to going to work. And now a lot of them just dread going to work, fighting with the people because they say the people's nasty. And, so it really exposed a lot.
Well, I think we're still going to be dealing with that for a while.
Oh, yes. It changed, right. It changed our whole way of thinking. It changed our society.
Yeah. Well, I think it pitted people against one another in a way that they'd never been really against each other, it seemed.
Yes. Look at the people now that used to get up, get dressed, and go to an office building and interact with people for 8.5, 9 hours a day, and then come home. And now they're home all the time. Some of them don't even get bothered to get out of their pajamas. They just sign in their computer and work from home. I don't think that's, I could see people say, oh, it's great, I could stay home. But I don't think that's a positive thing. I think we need to get out and interact with people and dress up and shower and shave and go to work and.
Well, it's not mentally healthy.
Yeah.
And we see that. I just laugh at how I see people traveling nowadays, and I know I'll offend a whole bunch but people, they're wearing their sweatpants and and it's like, it's like, please, if you're getting on an airplane, somewhat dress up,
When I started my airline career in the 60s, you would go out to the airport and John Q. Public traveled in church attire.
Yeah.
The women were all dressed up in nice dresses and hats and gloves, and the men had shirts and ties and suits. If you would take someone today back at the airport in 1964, 65, they wouldn't believe it.
They probably wouldn't let you on the plane.
We had no
walk up the way the average person does dressed today. They probably wouldn't even let you on the plane.
We had no security there. There were no checkpoints. You bought your ticket at the counter and you went down to the gate. You sit down there in a seat and wait for the gate agent to announce the flight arriving and departing and get on board. And nothing. The whole industry's changed so much, but COVID really changed it.
Well, I guess it was all the way up to 9/11 that you could go out to the gate. Because I mean, you could go all the way out to the gate, even at the international part of it. Because I know I've been out there to pick people up, and I remember, as a child, it was always the greatest thing. You'd go out, you'd have to go through security, but you'd go out to the gate. I'd see my dad come right off the plane. Uh, but nowadays and it's probably better. I can understand it functioning better having everybody back, but it's a lot of folks won't know what it was like in the old days of air travel. I will say, Ron Hardcrackers, he said that his wife had her third hernia surgery Thursday, and it didn't work out very well. So keep her in your prayers for those of you who are watching, and you may not be reading the comments. So, and then Brother Allen said COVID changed most things, unfortunately, and indeed it did.
Yeah. Well, our thoughts and prayers go out to the hernia surgery. Boy, I hate to hear that it didn't go so good. That can be a simple operation, but if it goes amok, it can be some other problems. Of course, different airports operated different, but 9/11 didn't cause the security. We had security before that. If you stop and think about it, and I don't know how much he was into aviation, but we actually had airplanes back in the 70s, the latter 60s and early 70s, that we had no security, and these people would get on with guns and weapons, and they would hijack these airplanes to Cuba. Don't you remember when all the airplanes were going to Cuba? We had about 4 of our flights hijacked to Cuba. And finally, the airline says, what are we going to do? And then they said, well, we're going to set up security checkpoints. And then we had the whole argument is who's going to manage the checkpoints, the airline or the airport? Well, the airport says, we're not going to pay for those people, the airlines. So we, as an airline, at one time had to operate a security checkpoint, which just consists of a folding table down in front of the gate. And people would go and we would run them through a checkpoint. Then the government got involved and they took over. But people were hijacking these airplanes and flying them down to Cuba. And then, of course, Cuba had possession of the airplanes, and they would say, all right, airlines, you owe us $500,000 to get your airplane back. I mean, it was a deal, but hijacking is what started the security, not 9/11.
Right. Well, and I mean, I think even into the first year after 9/11, I always, when I would go through security, and I mean, this was before 9/11, they, had the little metal detector at Birmingham Airport or Atlanta that you'd go through. And I always carried my Swiss Army knife with me. Nobody ever said anything about it. I'd throw it up there in the little tray that they would, put through the X-ray machine. And as I say, I'm pretty sure it's even shortly after 9/11. But then it amazes me even still now, where every airline that I'm on, traveling overseas, when they bring you your food, they're going to give you a sharp plastic knife. If you're in business or first class, they're giving you a metal knife to eat your food with. And I'm like, well, why can't I bring my pocket knife on the plane with me? The only thing I ever had the airline take away from me, though, when going through the metal detector, I always carried a World War II metal spoon with me. And they took that metal spoon away from me. And I was like, why? I don't know why. They just, they like, and I take that back. There's one other thing that recently hit me for this at the airport going through Houston. Houston is rough, and this is a pencil, and so it's even sold as a travel pencil, and they wanted to take my pen from me, but I really put my foot down at that, and they were saying that it was a bullet. Well, that's a bullet. Well, you can tell it's a pencil. And the pen, where I put my foot down with that, I said, this is a space pen. This is the pen that the astronauts use. And so I'm like, so I can take this on the space shuttle, but I can't take it on United Airline. So they let me keep this. And for this pen, what I did is I took my pencil part out of it and I took the eraser off and I gave them the other what they deemed to be the cartridge. So
Well, those people that work at TSC, they do have quite a deal. Of course, I said you mentioned your knife. I can remember back when we said, well, can we allow them to carry pocket knives? And then we got into the discussion. If so, how long? How long could the blade be on the pocket knife? We started arguing about that. Is 4 inches okay? Is 5 inches okay? Well, 6 inches is a pretty good sized blade and all that stuff. But who would have known it wasn't knives that took down those airplanes? It was box cutters.
Yeah.
The 9/11 people, that they had box cutters, which is a lot sharper than most knives.
But that's where I say, they're already giving you a plastic knife for the metal knife.
Yeah.
Or what about when they give you the aluminum can for the drink? You could rip that open and you got a little sharp. I'm not meaning to give ideas. I'm just saying that, sometimes there's all these kind of little lapses in security there.
I used to travel a lot first class, and it's the people in the back that got those meals that got those plastic, but up front they give us hard, metal.
Yeah,
not
still
fork spoons.
Not that I've been in first class. I always thought dressing nice they'd bump me up, but they never did.
Well, I was really lucky in my career, and as an airline employee, you get a fly free if the space is available. It's called space available. So, well, I traveled the world free for years. There was times I'd go to the airport and I'd trade a few days off. I'd have about 3 or 4 or 5 days, and I'd pack my suitcase and go to the airport. And after I got off, I'd get on an airplane. When I left go to work that day, I wasn't even sure where I was going to go. And I'd go to Arizona or California or Florida or, New York. Just it was a wonderful career.
Now I've had them look at my tamper before, but they still let me take it. And I've had them get a little concerned over my pipe cleaners. I'm sure they kind of look crazy going through going through the X-ray machine. But all those things now should be, categorized in the machine, so they should know, oh, this is what that is. But anyway, those are the only things I've really, out of all my years, had people trigger about. And they'll let you carry, Bic lighter. I always tell people never carry your lighter like this, because if they take this away, you're up the creek. But the Bic lighter, here's the thing: if they take it from you, well, once you're past airport security, you can stop at one of the little stores inside the security.
Past security, you stop at one of the stores and get a Bic lighter.
Right, because that's what I did. I was like, one of the times I didn't take the lighter because I thought, well, they might give me trouble here because it's a little stricter airport. And so anyway, as soon as I got past security, I stopped at the first little kiosk and picked up a lighter. But my dad, if he was on right now, he'd tell the story that they did one time, I guess, and this would have been long before 9/11. They didn't want to let him on with his little it's a little tamper that has a knife blade in it and a little pick in it. And his dad had given it to him, so he definitely, didn't want to just lose that. But they let him put that in an envelope, and they gave it to the pilot, and then the pilot gave it back to him afterwards. So,
yeah.
But I don't even know that they would do that nowadays.
Well, now the pilots, and they did that, and the pilot says, why should I be in charge of all this stuff they're collecting?
Yeah.
It mankind solves its problem in strange ways.
Yeah.
But who would have ever thought they would hijack those airplanes with box cutters?
Looking at the comments here, and Ragamuffin said, Professor, this may not surprise you, but I don't own a tie. Well, he won't be flying a plane in the 1950s. But
It's good you can read the comments. I can, unfortunately.
he said, I'm just a country boy. I had suits as a kid, needed one even when I was on stage. And if I can't be genuine with the folks and be myself, I just don't go. Much to the disappointment of my wife, she loves to get dressed up. Well, I've always liked to get dressed up, so
Yes.
that's just me. But I think I hadn't worn a tie on a plane very many times. But in Africa, I only wore this when we'd be doing kind of official church functions, or I wore it when I was traveling within the country. Is I'd wear a clerical collar, because in Nigeria, really, regardless of denomination, even the Baptist preachers will wear a clerical collar. And so I learned one time, I told my coworker, I said, we had a big presentation. It's going to be a week-long presentation. And I said, I know this is out of the norm for both of our personalities. I said, but let's get clerical collars for this. I said, I'm going to do it. And he's like, well, okay. So we ordered some clerical collars off of eBay. They arrived in time for the presentation. The first morning of the presentation, donned in clerical collar and going to the church, one of the village elders, and I think we'd already been in that village for maybe 4 or 5 years, the village elder said, oh, y'all are reverends. Yeah, that's all of these years. Yes. So watching and noticing how that one thing suddenly changed the people's in the village approach to us. We were going to visit the king of the people group. I said to my coworker, I said, well, I'm going to wear the clerical collar to go visit the king. And so we're on our way to see the king. And in Nigeria, there's constant police checkpoints, military checkpoints. To go from the village to the city, we would go through at least 7 different checkpoints along the way. First checkpoint we roll up to, they stand to attention, they salute us, motion us on through. Next checkpoint we come to, they greet us, and they, just as kind as could be, motion us on through. After that day's travel, I told my coworker, I said, I don't know about you, but from now on, whenever we are traveling from point A to point B, I'm wearing the clerical collar. So on one of my first trips after this experience of traveling back to the States, I put it on to leave the country. And I get to the counter at check-in, and then they had a form for you to fill out that you had to, put your details of how long you've been in the country and all this. And the lady's like, oh, just give me your passport. I'll fill that out for you. Like, well, all righty. This is from this day forward.
Yeah.
So that changed my travel experience. And even when I got to Charles de Gaulle Airport in France, they were so much more kind and gentle and just really nice.
Yeah. I experienced the same thing in the Philippines. You'd go up there, you'd go into a bank, and there'd be, of course, a eunuch with people, but they would see somebody wearing their collar, and they would get him out of line. Come on up here. Same thing, check in a hotel. You check in a hotel, there's a line, but they'll see a pastor or somebody with a collar on. They get them right up front. I don't know how well that went over with the people waiting in line, but
Yeah. Well, you can give them indulgences. Well, the only problem would be is if you're on the flight, then somebody's like, "Oh, I tell you, I need to confess this." But
You say, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned."
uh, but I would did that in Africa because it was such a norm there. Otherwise, it's pretty out of my personality to to do that.
Yes.
But there it was really a term of respect. One of the times my coworker was traveling by himself, and the security stopped him because he's by himself, and they're like, "Is everything okay? Where's your driver?" Like they were all like worked up that here's this pastor and he's driving himself. He's by himself. Something must be wrong.
Wife's coming in the drive or the garage. I sit out here in the garage and I get garage activity also. That's the dog greeting the wife.
Sounds like the dog's attacking your wife. Must be your dog.
Yeah, I better go. I don't want to interrupt this stream.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No problem. Well, I need to go on and get on with the day anyway. We've been going at for about an hour and a half, and we've just been rambling. But it's been a nice visit.
Oh, have a good day.
Folks, as far as I know, we'll be back next month. So mark it on your calendar, and great to have those of you who have joined us in YouTube. And have a good day, Bob. God bless.